Right, hello everyone. Yes, here tonight to talk about Paul Krassner, obviously, as advertised, because we've been talking about the rumours about what they might have been covering up at Cielo Drive and with the Manson murders, basically. And Paul Krassner is one of the earliest sources. In fact, he was the first person to actually name people's names. Dennis Hopper was the first person to talk about there being pornography up there. We already covered him. But he didn't name any names. Paul Krassner does in an article that I will get to reading to you later. I've got a lot of reading to do, so I can't beat around the bush too much. But yes, basically, so I'm going to read his obituary as well, because it gives a really good summary of his life, just for people who don't fully understand who he is. So it's important to consider things about Paul Krassner and, what he wrote. And yes, but we'll get to that when I read it out anyway. And yeah, and like I say, this article, I was just going to read it to you for the thing about the pornography rumours, but it goes into a whole load of CIA theories and stuff like that and leads back to May Brussels. So yeah, strap in. So it gets wild. It's not just about the pornography talks. And this article goes off on loads of different tangents about lots of different things. I'm not going to read out the entire thing because there's a point where he stops talking about the Manson case altogether. But yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, we'll get into like May Brussels stuff and all that. So yeah, it's interesting. Excellent. Yes, and sorry about last night as well. That was just a scheduling error. It's always a Thursday night stream. I would never do a Wednesday night stream. That was an error. So yeah, sorry about that. Anyone who turned up, yeah. And I'm going away next week. That's why I've done an extra stream, because there won't be any streams the week after. So yeah, and I'll probably do another one Sunday, but then there won't be any for a week. So yeah. Oh yeah, welcome. I see a couple of people say it's your first time here. Yeah, welcome to if it's the first time you're at a live stream. Yeah, and like I say, I want to get on with it pretty quickly today though, because there's so much to read out, and it gets, like I say, it gets wild though. He doesn't just talk about the porn rumours, so we will get yeah. We're actually just about to get into that. That comes up in his obituary. Yeah. But anyway, yes. But this is the point about Paul Krassner. He wrote stuff like that, and anyway, I'll just get on with reading it out. This is Paul Krassner's obituary. He died in 2019. When People magazine called Paul Krassner the father of the underground press, he responded with mock outrage. "I immediately demand a paternity test," he said. It was a typical response for Krassner, a comedian, satirist and writer who took little seriously while challenging social and political standards in the 1960s. The motto of his groundbreaking counterculture magazine, The Realist, was "Irreverence is our only sacred cow." The FBI, which kept tabs on Krassner, once wrote a letter calling him a raving, unconfined nut. Krassner died Sunday after a brief illness at his home in Desert Hot Springs, California, and it said his daughter, Holly Krassner Dawson. He was 87. Krassner was a key figure in the swirling cultural upheaval that began in the late 1950s and continued through the Vietnam era. He coined the word yippie in 1967, co-founded the Youth International Party with radicals Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, and among the activists who turned Chicago's 1968 Democratic National Convention into a madcap showcase for anti-war protesters. Afterward, he testified at the Chicago 7 conspiracy trial while hallucinating on LSD. The Realist, published by Krassner from 1958 to 1974, challenged decency laws by printing uncensored profanities and writing candidly on race, abortion, recreational drug use, religion, and homosexuality. Krassner called the publication the magazine of the lunatic fringe, a label that belied its wide audience. Comedian George Carlin once said that in the 1960s, Krassner was funnier than Danny Kaye, more powerful than Jerry Lewis, as important as acid. Krassner's most infamous moment probably came in 1967 when he printed what he said were unpublished excerpts from William Manchester's book on the assassination of John F. Kennedy, The Death of a President, including a passage that described Lyndon Johnson having sex with JFK's dead body. In fact, it was all fiction written by Krassner. The outrage was so heated that even some of Krassner's most broad-minded readers thought it crossed the line. Newsman Harry Reasoner said in his memoir that there were only two men he would not shake hands with, Senator Joseph McCarthy and Paul Krassner. Krassner said he never regretted publishing the piece. "Many people still tell me that it was the first thing that woke them up to the cover-up of JFK's assassination," Krassner told The Times in 1993. It was also a metaphor for Johnson's crude character, I didn't believe Johnson had anything to do with it, but he benefited from it. Paul Krassner was born April 9th, 1932, in the Astoria neighborhood of Queens. His father, Michael, was a Hungarian-American printer, and his mother, Ida, a Russian-born legal secretary. He was a child violin prodigy who performed at Carnegie Hall at the age of 6, the youngest person to do so at the time, but he had little passion for the violin and put it aside. Krassner did develop a passion for pranks, something that followed him into adulthood. I found out as a kid you could get attention by making someone laugh, he said. While studying journalism at New York's Baruch College in the 1950s, Krassner worked as a stand-up comedian under the name Paul Mall and joined an anti-censorship newspaper called The Independent. After college, he walked out of his last class 3 credits short of a degree and never went back. He started contributing to a new humour magazine called Mad. Krassner noticed there was no satirical magazine for adults, and in 1958 The Realist was born. Priding itself on seamless blending of the true and the made-up, the magazine became a seminal underground influence. Along with articles such as I Was an Abortionist for the FBI and The Act and Art of Nonconformity, The Realist published in-depth interviews with such figures as Lenny Bruce, Hugh Hefner, Joseph Heller, Woody Allen, and Timothy Leary. A young Carlin found The Realist both a revelation and an inspiration. It allowed me to see that others who disagreed with the American consensus were busy expressing those feelings and using risky humour to do so, Carlin wrote in 2002. Bruce, who was jailed repeatedly for his profanity-laced shows, was shocked when he saw that The Realist published obscenities without repercussion. He and Krassner became close friends, and Krassner edited Bruce's autobiography in 1964. The Realist published a fake Bruce obituary that brought angry calls from readers disheartened that the comic's death had been suppressed by the mainstream media. In May 1967, The Realist published parts left out of the Kennedy book, the inflammatory hoax that drew greater ire than any other Krassner prank. In the same issue was the Disneyland Memorial Orgy poster by cartoonist Wally Wood, which depicted Disney characters doing sex acts. On New Year's Eve 1967, while randomly looking for words that rhymed with hippie, Krassner created Yippie to describe an amorphous collection of counterculture activists led by himself, Hoffman and Rubin. Only later did he decide it stood for Youth International Party. As the group prepared for protests at 1968 Democratic National Convention, Krassner rattled Chicago leaders by suggesting that the Yippies were planning to put LSD in the city water supply. One of Krassner's pranks alienated some of his closest fellow radicals. He was called in 1970 as a defense witness in the Chicago 7 case, in which some of his close friends were tried on charges of inciting a riot at the convention. He took a large dose of LSD before testifying, hoping that he would be so sick that he would be dismissed. Instead, Krassner stumbled through disjointed testimony, having trouble remembering words such as Chicago. From the witness stand, he said in his memoir, the court clerk looked like Goofy, the prosecutor like the big bad wolf, and the judge like Elmer Fudd. It took Hoffman, one of the defendants, a few years to forgive him. In 1968, the Realist subscription list had grown to 100,000, and Life magazine published a positive profile of Krassner. Afterward, an FBI agent using a fake name sent a letter to the magazine saying, "To classify Krassner as some sort of social rebel is far too cute. He's a nut, a raving unconfined nut. As for any possible intellectual rewards to be gleaned from the Realist, much better prose may be found on lavatory walls." Krassner was a step ahead. His own letter to the editor said, "Regarding your article on that filthy-mouthed, dope-taking, pinko-anarchist, pope-baiting yippie lover, cancel my subscription immediately." Krassner's letter was published. The FBI's was not. Excuse me. Krassner discovered it years later when he was able to examine his FBI file. The Realist suspended publication in 1974, and there were fewer taboos by then, and it was making little money. And like I say, that's the most relevant part, and I'll make sure that's linked in the description if you want to read the rest of it. But basically, yeah, he's famous for doing hoaxes, for writing stuff that wasn't true. But this is in his magazine, The Realist. I don't know if that applies to everything he wrote for other newspapers. This what I'm about to read you was published by the Berkeley Barb. And, the other papers would get sued, So he can't have always been writing satire, but people are always saying that, he wrote satire and he made up a lot of stuff. So could he be making up these rumours? But that's basically what you have to take into account when you're looking at Paul Krassner. And this article does get really like long-winded and strange and disjointed. He jumps around from subject to subject a bit. It's hard to follow. So yeah, just looking at what people said for a second. Yeah. Oh, what? There might be a tornado where Kane is. Sorry, missed the comment we said that. Yeah, but yeah, we've got wind and rain here. So much. Yeah, for the summer. It's windy now. Hopefully, it will get better. I'm going to Holland in a week, so next Monday. So hopefully, it'll be better by then. It'll be good over there. It won't be bad in Holland. Yeah. So look. Yeah, no, Sam was here. Yeah, sorry, I can see people saying yeah, because I did. He said the thing about the thing he said about Lyndon B. Johnson, but that was a hoax article. He claimed it was an extract from a book that hadn't been published yet, but he'd actually written it himself. But yeah, I'm going to go to Amsterdam. Yeah, yeah. Got friends who live there. Yeah. So yeah, because there's so much to read out. And really, I just wanted to have everyone know that, because a lot of people might not know who Paul Krassner is. It was a long time ago, wasn't it? But he was really relevant to the counterculture. And in his magazine, The Realist, he published things that definitely weren't true. You know, he did hoaxes. So yeah, it makes you want to take with a pinch of salt everything he wrote, possibly, doesn't it? But yeah, that's it. Anyway, I'm going to get on with reading this article out, because otherwise it might... I don't want this stream to be too long. Sorry, got to switch. The easiest way to do it is just to read the PDF. You can find these articles in the description as well, and you can either read them on the site, or you can download the PDF like I have here. And that you get download the whole issue. This is the Barclay Barb. And on the slides I do later, I've got the exact edition and date and all that. But yeah, like I say, I just was bringing it to you because it's the first time that the pornography rumours anyone names names, but the whole article gets really crazy and it gets into conspiracy stuff. So I thought, oh, people will enjoy this. So I'll get on with it anyway. The article is called "Let Them Eat Shampoo." Just a shampoo, huh? It's a one-dimensional mod soap opera. I can't trust anybody but you. Warren Beatty pleads to Julie Christie. But what levels of intimacy have they shared beyond superficial humping on the kitchen floor, with Nixon and anew as a self-righteous backdrop of corruption? Too easy a target for those whose lifestyle is not exactly Nouveau Viet Cong peasant chic. He offers to marry her and raise a nuclear baby with the very same American casualness that electroshock therapy is accepted as a cure for oppression in A Woman Under the Influence. Together, those two films provide the precise poles that encompass the missing link in the propaganda mission behind the Manson murders. I've been investigating since Christmas 1971. It's not easy, said Warren Beatty at a real-life press conference, to separate sexual and political hypocrisy. He didn't say it was impossible, though. Among the porny films found at Sharon Tate's loft was an orgy with Peter Sellers, Yul Brynner, Warren Beatty, and the late Cass Elliot, at whose house fellow victims Frykowski and Sebring buggered a dope dealer named Billy Doyle, who was tied to a chair because he had burned them. The $25,000 reward, tendered jointly by Sellers, Brynner, and Beatty, were actually bribed to shush the Los Angeles Police Department about the Hollywood-Washington connection. The autopsy of Mama Cass is impossible to get, and Warren Beatty is going steady with Mama Michelle. The same syndicate was fulfilling the hit list that included Bobby Kennedy, Cass Elliot, Lenny Bruce, Sharon Tate's unborn child, and several other extras hanging around the set. Network Schizophrenia, Geraldo Rivera, shows on ABC that President Kennedy was shot by more than one person. Eric Severeid insists on CBS that there was a single assassin. Jerry Rubin and Emmett Grogan align themselves with the establishment by perpetuating that myth in Do It and Ringolevio. Sorry if I butchered that. Stephen Weed cutely mentions to an all the Chinese food you can eat luncheon that Patty Hearst's favourite books were Do It and The Marquis de Sade. Jerry jumps up and down, shouting, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And Joe Russon of KQED jokes, "We knew it, Jerry, but we suppressed it." While Rennie Davis stays with Guru Letha Joy, Letha Joy, Jerry Rubin continues to push EST or Scientology or Arica or any other authoritarian spiritual boot camp trip in the guise of liberation, financed by Chilean cocaine dealers protected by the CIA. When your global strategy involves controlling the borders of countries and you also have to control the minds of the inhabitants, manipulating consciousness to the credit for deprogramming is invested in the reprogrammer. Any wonder that the army is getting into transcendental meditation? God is in your central nervous system. The function of a guru, said Alan Watts, is to help you wake up from the dream when your time comes. But the function of fascism is to imprint its value system on you at the point in time and even be grateful for your exploitation. One of my own gurus was a bum. I shared some hot soup with once. He turned out to be an extremely high-level intelligence dropout. I helped cure his alcoholism with LSD sessions. He has provided me with more contacts and information than I've sometimes been able to handle. I've never known or cared. What his real name is. Over the past few decades, I learned disciples of Aleister Crowley, who joined secret societies so that he could expose them, have been diligently following his example. They have infiltrated all kinds of secret societies: religious, mystical, voodoo, organized crime, corporations, the military, prisons, the Justice Department, Interpol, governments, city, state, federal, on an international scale, labour unions, trade associations, professional organisations, the private sector, including groups of individuals who have in common only the same astrological sign. These do exist. You may not have known of them simply because they are secret societies. Excuse me. The most insidious conspiracy in history has been the deliberate plot to substitute arbitrary emotions for instinctual feeling, to replace sensuality with patriotism. Participation in human sacrifice goes on at the top echelons. The same motivation to remain clandestine has been behind ostensible natural deaths of NBC's Frank McGee, J. Edgar Hoover, and Lyndon Johnson. When Walter Cronkite interviewed him shortly before his death, LBJ admitted he never believed the Warren report. CBS left this out of the telecast. I haven't even met my latest guru, a high school student in Oregon. I had gone there to work with Ken Kesey on the search for Tim Leary. We went to see the film Lenny. During the intermission in the lobby of the theatre, I talked briefly with some young people who were discussing a debater who had taken the position that the ultimate failure of the two-party system was indicated by Harry Truman's decision to drop the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. While I was doing the research for my book Tung Fu, I discovered it in the history of World War II by B. Liddell Hart that the peace negotiations with Japan had been set in motion and it was never necessary to end the war with atomic destruction. Carriers of the Nazi torch have never given up their dream of manifest destiny. H.R. Haldeman is just a better actor than Warren Beatty. In Shampoo, the female sex object says no, no, while George the hairdresser says yes, yes, and they end up voluntarily in the sack. But seduction is the lowest form of rape. Public relations is the highest form. When Warren Beatty campaigned for George McGovern, he told reporters, "The American presidency is the most important moral force in the world. If I can have a say in who feels it or doesn't, then I will." But Beatty did not refuse to compromise when McGovern screwed Thomas Eagleton in 1,000 different orifices, and the Eagleton affair was a set-up from the get-go. John Ehrlichman, sorry I'm butchering all these names, all but confessed this in an incredible masterpiece of double talk. Warren Beatty distorted the parallax view to imply a vague motivationless pattern behind a series of political assassinations, and a $50,000 went to Paul Simon for humming an Aboriginal tune in Shampoo. How I begged Simon for money to publish made Brussels material linking the sounds of silence, linking Watergate and the assassinations, but the sound of silence reigned supreme. Yet there had been no hesitation in calling for my assistance and in getting a psychiatrist to keep Art Garfunkel out of the army so that a winning team wouldn't be broken up. And Joe DiMaggio emerged to push coffee addiction on Mrs. Robinson. Bob Dylan also refused to help me, eager to invest his money in oil rather than flesh. $50,000 is also what CBS gave to H.R. Haldeman for singing to Mike Wallace and showing home movies of Richard Nixon, Elmer Davis, the black jailhouse lawyer who took the rap for E. Howard Hunt, and G. Gordon Liddy's burglary of Daniel Ellsberg's Shrink, should only get such attention and money. But Haldeman was a known anti-Semitic frat rat in the University of Southern California, and Watergate was merely further escalation of the original coup d'etat that occurred when President Kennedy was killed. At the time Alexander Butterfield told Watergate investigators of the White House tapes, he had already been promoted from the Secret Service to head of the Federal Aviation Agency that would cover up and sabotage the plane whose crash was just as inadvertent as his testimony, destroying the life of Dorothy Hunt, Michelle Clark of CBS, and a number of passengers whose negative karma could be collectively rationalized as just one more jump in the unofficial body count. The Butterfield promotion was a reward for loyalty, as in the secret society. But loyalty to whom? Not to Nixon, but to the Nixon administration, the Divine Light Mission, the Committee to Re-elect the President, or whatever it was called. Do you think that Dick Nixon is any less a prisoner of war than Tim Leary? Clifford Irving's book will be published finally, and he expects legal problems, but not from Howard Hughes, if there is such a thing as Howard Hughes, or Patty Hearst anymore. After my interview with her was published in Crawdaddy, I was visited by the agents Haggerty and Loffelhoys of the FBI. Herb Cain of the San Francisco Chronicle remarked to me on the phone how dumb they must be, and I replied sarcastically, I guess they're just not as perceptive as you, Herb. He quoted me in his column saying, if the FBI couldn't tell that was a put-on, we were in worse trouble than I thought. I never said that. Herb Cain put quotes around it in my name. The FBI is not dumb. The FBI is organized crime. Remember the COINTELPRO plan to kidnap radicals? Patty Hearst was a relative radical. Jack Scott is more obvious. Abby Hoffman is positively blatant. What was the CIA going to do after they kidnapped radicals? Use their images to convince the American public of the need to protect them from terrorists. Obviously, Weather Underground had nothing against the black baseball star Reggie Jackson. Then who were the dirty tricksters who phoned in threats against his life in the name of the Weather Underground, and why? So his protection could be staged for the most effective propaganda purposes. It was announced on network television after the Oakland A's had just won the 7th game of the World Series that 100 FBI agents were watching over Reggie Jackson so that he could live up to his standing as most valuable player. Just one more carefully stated input into the American consciousness to separate people from each other. The FBI holds Patty Hearst in captivity and then makes 27,000 checks into her whereabouts. There are, and this is not a typographical error, 25,000 laxatives. All is as equally unnecessary as the FBI and as equally programmed into the public's mind. Does anybody really believe that Huey Newton, who withstood the torture of solitary confinement with an organized Buddhist discipline, which astonished even his own prison guards, would nevertheless pistol whip his tailor for calling him a baby and then flee? Ken Moss is a gentle, altruistic soul. It is inconceivable that he would give members of the average white band heroin to snort, thinking it was cocaine, and then run away to escape a murder charge. Either Cher Bono finked to further her career, or she has been duped. Ken Moss is a kidnapped radical. His Freelandia was a threat to the commercial airlines, just as Otis Redding and Jimi Hendrix were threats to the recording and distributing industries. Richard Nixon is now a kidnapped radical. We have only the word of his appointee, Gerald Ford, of the Warren Commission infamy, who visited him on November 1st, 1974, to assure us that Nixon showed great strength but appeared to be a very sick man. Remember how Nixon was afraid to go to the hospital and had to bring his own wheat germ to avoid poisoning? Remember how at a press conference he talked about his plane crashing, the guns being held to his head? These were not merely metaphors. Novelist Herb Gold went to interview Nixon at San Clemente, but he could only see Ron Ziegler, Haldeman's original partner in crime, in the J. Walter Thompson public relations front. And now we have Billy Graham to reassure us that Nixon is finding Christ, along with Charles Colson and Colonel Sanders, all staged, just like a good TV game show should be. Fascism by the grace of public relations. When I interviewed George Lincoln Rockwell, head of the American Nazi Party, in 1961, he praised William Buckley as an anti-Semitic acquaintance and said his goal was to make Nazism nice. Rockwell had to be assassinated because he was too upfront. His convicted killer, John Patler, remains in prison, insisting he was framed. Führer Gerald Ford has 100 PR personnel to purvey his image. Now the Fashion Industry Council names him the Best Dressed Statesman of the Year. He holds up this year's poster child on television. His daughter, Susan, is photographed outside with an electric fan blowing her hair. His staff photographer eats Candy Bergen for breakfast. Candy, the former lover of Bert Schneider, producer of Hearts and Minds, who then gets set up for a dope bust. All imagery, marriages of political convenience. Happy Rockefeller deserted her children for the sake of a quick wedding to the governor, arranged class marriages, and espionage modus operandi, just like Lee Harvey Oswald of Navy intelligence and his blushing bride Marina. The uncooperative offspring are sacrificed along the way. Michael Rockefeller, Patty Hearst, Sharon Percy, Abigail Folger, Diana Linkletter, who did not jump out of a sixth-floor kitchen window on a bad LSD trip. She was living with a dope dealer who was the first suspect the police checked out after the Sharon Tate murders. It is false freedom for Mel Brooks to sing Springtime for Hitler on the Dinah Shore show. Dinah was the mistress of Spyro and You before Burt Reynolds. These were power relationships. Burt Reynolds beat Sarah Miles' agent to death with sleeping pills, and the Los Angeles coroner had to be imported to Arizona to conduct the autopsy. This is the right-wing Hollywood establishment. Dinah Shore fucked Clint Eastwood in Merv Griffin's house. We have spies everywhere. Jack Nicholson, who was with Mama Michelle before Warren Beatty, is starring in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, now being filmed in Oregon. But the cast has been forbidden to fraternise with Ken Kesey. Off limits, just like in the army. How will they distort Kesey's novel? John Lilly is suing because Navy intelligence ripped off his research and they turned sweet dolphins into little grey N-words of the sea. Robert Blake wanted desperately to play the part of McMurphy in Cuckoo's Nest. Instead, he got shunted into Beretta, and Stacey Keach got shoved in Caribe. What's next? Will Rhoda's sister Brenda spin off into a Lady Cop series called SWAT Twat? Who runs the movie industry anyway? Paramount is owned by Gulf Western. They bought up to 50,000 copies of Love Story to make it a bestseller, and then produced the film. After that came The Godfather, propagandizing the notion that the FBI was always after organized crime and that the CIA was responsible for heroin distribution. Warner Brothers is owned by organized crime. They pushed fear in The Exorcist and pulled in truth by buying up Prince, and taking off the market The Second Gun, a film which presents incontrovertible evidence that Bobby Kennedy did not die by Saran alone. The Manson family was a hit group for the Syndicate. When my book of stuff from The Realist was published in September 1971, I was in effect blacklisted from TV talk shows. I was, however, interviewed by Barbara Walters for the Today Show, which is live, but my segment was taped. It was not shown until election morning. I was informed by NCB executive that this was deliberately scheduled to scare the voting public, which hasn't seen a hippie on television since Charlie Manson. In November 1971, I was fired from my radio show on KSFX, the ABC outlet in San Francisco, by George Yahes, the lover of Alan Shaw, head of FM stations for ABC in New York. I was told by ABC executives that there had been government pressure. Of course, I have not been the only such victim. What we have here is a homosexual rape of the United States. Tomorrow, the world. John Dean is a closet queen. His wife, Maureen, works for the Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, the same international police force which Joanna Harcourt Smith works for. The DEA, which kidnapped Tim Leary and killed Dennis Martino, the same DEA which Bill and Emily Harris worked for. Remember the hurried honeymoon of John and Maureen Dean with $4,000 from the safe right in the midst of the Watergate turmoil? It was Dean's lawyer who leaked to Daniel Shaw of CBS the defensive notion that John was afraid of going to prison because he might be raped by homosexuals there. And it was Maureen Dean who accidentally spilled a bunch of amyl nitrate during an airline flight and boasted to the man sitting next to her how good it was for sex, so that he in turn could inform the press. Their window dressing marriage was as carefully staged as the murder at Altamont and the killing of Joe Colombo, each of which had featured a programmed black with a gun standing out in a virtually all-white crowd at an outdoor event, one a rock concert, the other an Italo-American rally. In the CIA the CIA could kill Joey Gallo, making it look like an intramural gang feud, before he could talk about it at the first Liebling Counter Convention in New York, where he was scheduled to speak in May 1972. Altamont was no surprise after the surveillance at Woodstock by Army Criminal Intelligence Division personnel posing as photographers. The counterculture had to be suppressed because of the economic implications of sharing. The most startling discovery in my Manson research was Charles Winans of Navy Intelligence, who posed as a hippie artist. He blurted out an anti-Semitic epithet on one occasion and provided the family with dope and a scenario of violence and witchcraft for Tex Watson, who actually committed the Tate murders. Charlie merely instructed his brainwashed girls to go with Tex and do what he told them. The sheriff's department had been instructed to leave Charlie alone despite his parole violations. The cover story was that Tex Watson happened to pick up Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who was hitchhiking. Manson had been staying at Wilson's house. Charlie Manson was a master pimp. Murder is the logical extension of pimp power. Recently, I met one of the hookers sent to Costa Rica to service Robert Vesco. I asked, was he a good lay? I don't know, was the giggled response. I was hard to go down on his wife. Does anybody really believe that Nelson Rockefeller gives happy head? Rockefeller's secretary, Nancy, got to marry Henry Kissinger, another staged event. It was H.R. Haldeman who originally wouldn't permit Kissinger's Strangelove accent to be heard in TV newscasts, and the media complied. Only a handful of lip-reading viewers knew that Henry didn't speak with Dan Rather's clipped English. Right, and he doesn't mention the Manson family after that, but the article does go on for another whole page. Yes, obviously, you can hear the kind of thing he's talking about. And I've done slides here, so it's to show everything he said about the Manson family in that article. But yeah, like I say, a lot. Yeah, there are a lot of famous names mentioned there, aren't there? And a lot of them, I think they must be American TV presenters that we wouldn't necessarily have heard of. Sorry, I butchered people's names as well. I butchered loads of place names and people's names, didn't I? Like I said, the articles will be linked in the description if you want to see the whole thing and read it yourself, Yeah. But these are all the actual things he said that I've put on the screen now that are about the Manson family. Sorry, just looking at the chat for a second, obviously. Yeah. Right, well, anyway. So, yeah. Well, obviously, and this was from the Berkeley Barb, April 18th to the 24th, 1975. So this is the first time people name names, basically, in print. 1975. So that's quite a long time, isn't it? 6 years after the murders. And he names Warren Beatty, Peter Sellers, and Yul Brynner, and says they were filmed with Mama Cass, and the tapes were found in the loft at Cielo. Whereas Dennis Hopper hadn't previously named any names. He did say that the police found tapes, though, didn't he? And also, Krassner says Billy Doyle was buggered at Mama Cass's house. He got it slightly wrong. It actually happened at Cielo, and he was moved to Cass's to prevent retaliation. And previously, Hopper had said he was whipped. If you listen, he doesn't say he was buggered. Only Krassner comes out with that later. And also, he says Diane Linkletter did not jump. She was living with a dope dealer who was the first suspect the police checked out after the Sharon Tate murders. And yeah, we've all heard that, I'm sure, haven't we, in all the different books, that he's not the first person to say that. Yeah. Well, probably was at the time, though. That's where that rumour comes from. And he points out that Mama Michelle dated Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson. And she married Dennis Hopper, didn't she? Yeah, so she was, close to a lot of people that were, implicated in all this. Says the Manson family was a hit group for the syndicate, meaning the organised crime syndicate at Warner Brothers. But I don't know if that's what he means. If you read the when I was reading the article, he talked about Warner Brothers being organised crime. He does talk about Paramount because everyone involved with the Manson case was part of Paramount, weren't they? But yes, that's like the first time I've seen the claim made in print that they were a hit group for some kind of other syndicate. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and then there's the stuff about Charles Winans as well, of Navy intelligence, who posed as a hippie artist. He blurted out an anti-Semitic epithet at one occasion and provided the family with dope and scenarios of violence and witchcraft for Tex Watson, who actually committed the Tate murders. Charlie merely instructed his brainwashed girls to go with Tex and do what he told them. So that's a pretty radical claim, isn't it? And yeah, like I say, I'll save this for next week because Charles Winans is a whole rabbit hole, yeah. And he also says Tex happening to pick up Dennis Wilson was a cover story, and Charlie Manson was a master pimp. Murder is the illogical extension of pimpdom. So yeah, he's obviously really... Yeah, that's it. Who didn't shag Michelle? Who was she not with? Yeah. Sounds like she got around a lot, didn't she? Yeah. Yeah, and there were loads of undercovers at Spahn Ranch at one time, weren't there? Yeah, I've read that there was up to 6 undercover officers at Spahn Ranch at any time. So yeah. But you're looking into who Charles Winans actually is as well. He wasn't a... Oh, no, sorry, I was going to go like that, so I'm not fully... There you go. So we can keep it in mind, all the points. But Charles Winans really was an artist. May Brussels claims he just posed as an artist, but no, he really was. He illustrated books and that, and yeah. And he wasn't in the Navy, he was in the Air Force, so they've got that wrong as well. Like I say, I'm going to save most of this for next week, but yeah, Charles Winans, that's a rabbit hole. And if you're in my Facebook group or on the subreddit, I've shared the information already about Charles Winans. Yeah, that's it. They were a hit group. A hit group with far out rock sounds. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, that's the sad thing about Billy Doyle, yeah, because he had a fascinating life. He dated Mama Cass. He's supposed to have shagged Elizabeth Taylor and all sorts of stuff. Sold drugs to all these people, managed Dave Taylor. But yeah, he's just going to be remembered, isn't he, as that guy. It is a shame. Yeah, I will do a Sunday stream. I don't want to talk too much about Charles Winans now. Just want to show you that, yeah. Yeah, no, I am going to do Sunday, yeah. But then next week, there will be nothing because I'm going to be away. I don't get back till that Sunday, I don't think. So, yeah. So, yeah, I'll probably present to you the stuff about Charles Winans because, obviously, I love looking into all these conspiracy theories and talking about them and seeing what's possibly true and what isn't. And I know people do find it interesting, don't they? Because that May Brussels essay that I read out is not even the tip of the iceberg of the stuff she said about the Manson case. She did loads of shows about the Manson case, and this is like one of the biggest claims she makes. That's where Paul Krassner's getting this from about Winans. But yeah, Krassner got sued as well. Rolling Stone got sued for publishing it, and he had to stop saying the guy's name. So yeah, looks like it was actually settled out of court though, to avoid the public trial, because May Brussels would have had to be a witness. So Rolling Stone just quietly settled it. But people who support May Brussels obviously say, oh, that's a sign that he was guilty, the fact he didn't pursue the law case, but no. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. There was no internet, yeah. But he does say as well that one of his sources was a bum he met on the street who told him that he was an intelligence, person, and he never even knew the guy's real name. So cool, really. You'd use someone like that as a source. May Brussels as well, a lot of the stuff they found, because they only had what was published in newspapers, didn't they, and what reports they could request that the public would give them. So they did get pretty close, considering, that they didn't have the information we have now. And like I say, what's the information about all the psyops and shit that our government are doing right now won't get released for another 50 years, will it? There's the shit we don't know now. They actually did get close, considering. Oh yes, like and subscribe as well, if you haven't yet. Should get one of these on the screen. made these and don't use them. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Like I say, he wrote another article as well, which I've linked down in the description, but I'm not going to read it out because there was so much to read there. And yeah, a lot to digest. Like I say, but these are all the main points that he made about the Manson family. But he says all sorts as well, doesn't he? Yeah. And he talks about, people who refuse to help fund him publish Mae Brussels stuff. So Simon and Garfunkel and Bob Dylan refused to help. So yeah, it's interesting. And like I say, if you want to read the whole thing yourself. But the next article that he wrote was about Polanski's rape trial. And I can read that out. I'll probably read that out on Sunday night. It's a shorter article than Let Them Eat Shampoo. But yeah. And I should also mention, though it doesn't really matter to people on playback, does it? It's the 8th going into the 9th here now in the UK. But yeah, it's the anniversary of the crimes at Cielo Drive, isn't it? So yeah, R.I.P. the victims. Yeah. Like I say, it opens up. And also I like to draw attention to this sort of stuff because people think Tom O'Neill was the first person to talk about CIA conspiracy theories in the Manson case. But no, it was going on literally from when the trial was going on. I think, didn't Mae Brussel actually interview Charles Manson on the radio during the trial? It was crazy. He rang in from the prison phone and she interviewed him and stuff like that. And they were talking about there being CIA involvement right from when the trial was happening. What Tom O'Neill came out with is nothing new. And there's more in-depth stuff as well, like Charles Winans. This guy is actually really interesting because at first it was like I totally thought debunked it. No, there's no way he was. But no, there is actually some interesting stuff about the guy. But no, I think they make sweeping statements there and there's not enough evidence to back it up what they say. But yeah, we'll get to it like next week. Well, later in the week. Sunday night, I'll talk about Charles Winans a bit. Like I say, if you're in my Facebook group, the information I found is already posted in there. Have a read of it yourself. It's crazy. Well, yeah, he claims that this guy was sent in. He was sent in by naval intelligence to brainwash techs. But it's like the guy, when I found his obituary as well, he was actually in cryptology, so code breaking, when he was in the Air Force, not the Navy. Like, what's that got to do with mind control? Why would they use a man who was a specialist in cryptology to go and mind control people, So yeah, it all falls down quite a lot. Yeah, I did. I remember trying to find it. Yeah, it is difficult to find, but there's like big archives of her stuff now. There's a lot of it, isn't there? I think one of them is actually run by her family, even the Mae Brussels archive. But yeah, I couldn't find it when I looked. I remember, but there's shows where she talks about Charles Winans, and also when Rolling Stone got sued by Charles Winans because Paul Krassner had made that claim about him in this article. Obviously, can't find the article he wrote for Rolling Stone either. That's not archived anyway, yeah. But yeah, he obviously spouted a lot of stuff about the Manson case in different articles all over the place. It's just tracing them down. And I looked through all of the realist as well. He does mention the Manson case a few times, but he doesn't make any big claims about the pornography or anything in the realist. And there's an article in the realist that claims to be from someone who was at Boys Town with Charles Manson. I could read that out at some point, I suppose. But yeah, where it's satire. He so easily could have just faked that. So yeah, is it really worth looking at anything that he wrote in the realist as serious evidence for anything, knowing that it was a satire magazine? Yeah. Yeah, there's loads of there's a whole YouTube channel and there's a website that archives all their shows, and I've got the in the comments the shows where she talks about Charles Winans and this court case, but the court case never appears to have happened because there's no media reportage of it. It looks like Rolling Stone just settled it out of court. But yeah, I'll tell you about that next week because obviously that's the whole story. Yeah. Well, he kind of mentions Jay and Wojtek drug dealing, doesn't he? There. Not that I saw, not that I've seen so far. He just talks about the porn rumors, doesn't he? But yeah, he said loads of radical stuff there about them being a hit squad for the syndicate and stuff like that, didn't he? That's a big claim. And it's after he's talked about Paramount and Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is the last one he was talking about. But everyone who was in the Manson murders, like Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate and all that, they all worked for Paramount. So if anyone, they'd be working for Paramount if there was a hit squad. Who knows? Yeah, I didn't want to read out both the articles because it would have gone on too long if I did that. But yeah, the second article is, like I say, it's around the time of Roman Polanski's rape trial. And he says in this article he's going to be covering it, but then there's no more, so he never did actually report back on the rape trial, whether these things, or they didn't publish it. That's from the LA Free Press. The one I just read out is from the Barclay Bar. Yeah. Yeah. Dennis Hopper said it was inevitable. That's it. And that's sort of what the tone of all these articles is, isn't it? Yeah. Which I think is a bit cruel. Personally, I don't think that fucking anyone deserves what happened to them, no matter what. So yeah, I don't think that's a nice thing to say, is it? Obviously. Yeah. Sorry, just looking at the chat. Seeing what people are saying. Yeah. That's it. What? Hollywood people, famous people. Yeah. Well, people who fucking have the drive to get as famous. Usually, yeah, you'd have to be quite a narcissistic person, wouldn't you? Really, to want to be that famous, even. And how competitive it is as well. You have to force other people out of the way. And do things to get to where you want. So yeah, they are. By the time they get there, even if they weren't to begin with. Like it says about organised crime in the entertainment industry as well. That's another thing I want to talk about. So, like I say, because that could be demonstrated quite clearly how there was, organised criminals in the music industry in the 60s. And yeah, the movie studios. It was very much organised crime. Yeah. Like Lou Reed. Yeah, well, I've heard conflicting reports about him. I didn't hear that. I didn't know that he did beat his wife. I know that he wrote an album condemning his father for being a woman beater, but then I heard that he did beat his wives. He was, yeah, violent to people, violent to women. So I was like, yeah, I suppose at least he repented for it by writing that. Yeah, but he wrote an album called "Growing Up in Public." If you want to if you want to listen to that, yeah, and he talks about his father. There's a song he does a song called "My Old Man," and it's obviously, yeah, he's talking about his. It's a cathartic album, he talks about all his problems. Yeah. No, you should have seen him at a festival, but he pulled out because he was strung out. Yeah, probably. You got stuck in Dunkirk because you spent all your money on a Lou Reed concert. Well, that's it. He's an influential bloke then, obviously. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of weird stuff about Andy Warhol as well, though, and what Andy Warhol was really doing there and that, isn't there? It's all very, very strange. You're going to be an organised crime, but you couldn't get your shit together, yeah. Not organised enough. Yeah. Yeah, he could be vicious, couldn't he, as well? That's another thing about him, yeah. And he was rude to his fans and everything. A lot of artists are, though, aren't they? I think a lot of artists, people just approach them at a bad time and they don't want to talk to their fans, and that's, I think, yeah, people have negative experiences, don't they? Yeah, because they caught the person in a bad mood. Yeah, he was a strange bloke. People excuse it because they're artists. They say, oh, it's like Peter Sellers. People make excuses for Peter Sellers. If you look into how Peter Sellers treated his wives and children, he was a horrible, horrible man. And people like make excuses for him, say, oh, that's the price he paid for being a comic genius or whatever. But it's like, no, that's not an excuse, is it? Acting like an arsehole. Because there are like genius actors and that who are actually nice to their families as well. You know what I mean? It's not like a inevitable result of being a genius. You turn out to be an arsehole to your family, you know. Yeah, Peter Sellers was a horrible man. But then finding out about his being involved in all this in the late 60s, that probably led to his mental health decline, didn't it? Yeah, because I didn't realise this. I know that he was bipolar and his mental health was bad. But getting paranoid about all this, because he's also supposed to have been involved in cannabis smuggling as well, isn't he? The smuggling of the hash. And everyone obviously got really paranoid after the Manson murders happened. Yeah. Yeah, Vicious, that's, yeah. Lyric from one of his songs, yeah. Lou Reed, that is, yeah, obviously, yeah. Yeah, well, we're coming up for an hour on this one now, so I might end it and go to an after show because I've read out everything I needed to read out. And I've shown the slide with the bullet points, haven't I? So people can look at that if they're watching on playback. Sorry if my reading was deadpan as well. My voice has gone funny as well, if I've still got this throat thing. Like I say, it's hard to read. The way he writes is not very smooth. Do you know what I mean? It is quite hard to read him out. I hope you got it all though. Yeah, MK Ultra. Well, there's MK Ultra allegations in this, yeah. And like I say, obviously, him saying that about Charles Winans, obviously, I had to go and research that. And yeah, it turns out this comes from May Brussel. And Charles Winans was an interesting bloke, even if he wasn't. He worked with a lot of people. But like I say, I will get into that on Sunday. I'll spoil it if I tell you it all now. Yeah. Yeah, see you later, Dawn. See you, everyone. Yeah, like I say, I'll end this in a minute and I'll do an after show, though, for people that want it. If you want to hang around and just chat randomly about stuff. Yeah, and like I said, well, we've got 49 people here, so yeah, thanks for... There was over 50 at one point, so my audience has definitely grown for my live broadcast. Like I said, I'm so sorry if you were here last night waiting for me. I was out as well, so I couldn't even see people's messages and stuff like that. I wasn't looking at my phone. It was meant to be scheduled for tonight. I'd scheduled it for the wrong night. And there's no one else behind the scenes here. It's just me. If I fuck it up, no one else is going to put it right. So yeah. Yeah, hopefully I'm going to be able to get some more reading done and come back with some more different stuff. I want to cover Michael Hollingshead, but I need to read another couple of books before I cover him. Because he's written his own biography. There's his own biography, but he lies in his biography, and there's other books where they show how he lied and stuff like that, you know, so there's so much background stuff to read, and I don't get a chance. Because I'm constantly making this week's stream, you know. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you to people who've bought me a coffee as well. I've seen some money coming through from that. Yeah, so thank you. If you do use my buy me a coffee link. Yeah, so I'll wrap this one up now, and I'll come back. Yeah, give me 5 minutes, and I'll just start an after show if you want to see an after show. And thank you for coming. And like I say, sorry if my reading was poor. I don't feel that good, and my throat is awful. But if you want to read the article in more detail, because like I said, there's another whole page of it, but he's just going on about other conspiracy theories and a lot more stuff about Henry Kissinger and all that. If you're interested, the articles are below. By all means, read it. But yeah. Excellent. Yeah, so I'll wrap this up, and I'll see you on Sunday night if you're not coming to the after show. Or at the after show. Okay. Thanks, everyone, and good night.